So Stormgate free-to-play is open, and you're ready to start climbing your way to rank 1. Whether you're joining us as an RTS veteran, or your friend Tomothy just told you about the game, and you're not even quite sure what RTS is, I've got good news for you. Stormgate is pretty much brand new. The meta is still being figured out, and nobody really has an idea of what they're doing yet. Some of us played in the betas and the alphas, and have played in this preview period, early access. But really, we're talking about a matter of days instead of years like other RTS. It's the perfect time to jump into a new game, especially one like Stormgate, and today I'd like to talk to you guys about the 1v1 ladder and some tips for getting started. Before I do though, make sure you check out my other videos, and if you like those, consider subscribing to the channel. Oh, be sure to check me out on Twitch. I'm also streaming there pretty often. Well, alright, 8-Pop. Well, what should I do before I start playing the ladder? Should I practice a build in customs? Beat the campaign? Maybe level up all the heroes in co-op? That's a good question. And the answer to that is you really don't need to know anything to start playing 1v1. You barely need to know what RTS is at all. Making mistakes, losing, calibrating your MMR, it's all a part of the process to dial you in against opponents of equal skill. So don't get discouraged if you lose your first 5, even 10 games. The ranking system is still trying to get you matched against opponents of your equal level. Great, so maybe I'll lose some games along the way. But how do I improve and get better? I would actually argue that competitive 1v1 is the easiest kind of game mode to get better at. Because if you lose, it's your fault. There was something you could have done better, there was some fight that you could have taken, there were some decisions that you made in the game that were clearly wrong if you lost. So look back, check out your replays, see where you think you went wrong. If you're not sure, there's a wonderful RTS community behind the Stormgate that I'm sure would be more than happy to give you some adjustments or give you some ideas and tips on what you might be doing wrong. In a way, RTS is a lot like chess, where the better player should almost never lose. So even if you're only winning about 50% of your games, that's actually a pretty good win rate as far as RTS is concerned. Well, that's not entirely true. You could blame balance in the developers. They clearly have it out for my race. You could, and honestly right now, that might be a valid excuse. The game is still really honing in on balance, and in this latest patch they did a lot of improvements to the balance of all the races. The game is feeling better than honestly ever before, and all the betas, the alphas, and even this early access, so you're joining the game at a really great time. Is it perfect? No, of course not, and balance seldomly is. There's always going to be some tweaks and adjustments that need to be made here and there, but largely it comes down to your skill level against your opponent. A lot of people like to blame balance, or that one faction is overpowered, or obviously their faction is underpowered. But I would like to challenge people who think like this. While maybe that's honestly even true, maybe your faction is underbalanced, or maybe your opponent's faction is overpowered. Try to stop thinking in that mindset though. It really doesn't do anything to actually help you improve at the game. It's, for the most part, out of your control. I think giving feedback about this sort of stuff is good, but complaining or balance whining about it is really not going to get you anywhere. If you challenge yourself to improve at the game, and continue to do so regardless of what state the balance is in, you're going to pay way more dividends off in the future for it. Right now, there are all 3 races represented in the top 100. If they can get there, so can you. Okay, I feel like I understand some of the core ideas now, but what race should I actually play? Honestly, you should pick whatever you want to. Whatever looks the coolest or feels the best. What I wouldn't do is try to pick a faction that you think is overpowered or underpowered at the time. Balance will come and go. Typically what I like to do in every game I play is just pick whatever faction I think looks the coolest and learn the mechanics along the way. Sure, sometimes maybe my race is doing really well in a patch, or maybe they're doing poorly. But that all will adjust out and kind of balance out through time. Let me give you a brief overview of each faction to get you started and help to select what faction to play. Just keep in mind that Stormgate is still really early on in its development, so a lot of this might be likely to change. The Vanguard, I think, are the easiest to understand. They're the rebellious humans, holding on to their hopes of repelling the invading Infernals. Their workers mine resources, build buildings, and from those buildings you make other units. They're very direct. They're very simple to grasp. Right now, they're a faction that rewards close micro and attention to key units such as the Exo, with its high rate of fire and stutter stepping like movements. The Infernals are the invading force, seeking to crush the remnants of the Vanguard. They focus on sacrificing their units and casting dark rituals to win their fights. Right now, the way that they play is a bit more complicated than the Vanguard do. The macro that they use, they have to sacrifice workers, so it's a little bit harder to keep the balance between your economy and your infrastructure and your building. Their army units are a little bit more complicated as well. You're going to find that you'll be rewarded if you're able to micro your specific units to attack the targets that they're best at attacking, and usually that's going to mean microing several different types of units in the same army. Their armies as well may be a bit more complicated than Vanguard, as they like to have a little bit of everything in their late game. In the current meta, they play a bit more defensively, preferring to take fights near their towers and on Shroud. The Celestials are the most complicated to understand, and even sometimes I have a hard time grasping how they work. Their buildings and workers are completely unique to their energy mechanic, allowing you to push the envelope on exactly how much you can create. They start out with maxed out supply, so unlike the other two races, but they are dependent on their unique energy system, which basically stops them from having too many buildings at the same time without creating more power bank. Their workers and morph cores and even some of their buildings can fly around the map. Their definition of where their base is a lot looser than the other two factions that typically like to pile up all their buildings together and expand outwards. It's not uncommon for a Celestial to have buildings all over the map and kind of have a loose interpretation of exactly what side of the map their opponent is on and what side they're on. At the moment, a lot of their army units focus around an energy mechanic that typically will allow them to cast certain abilities or maybe empower their damage or defenses. Like I said, they're a bit complicated to learn and may be intimidating for new players, but they look really fun. They're certainly unique, and so they're not going to be like any other RTS faction you've ever played. All of these sound cool or still really not sure what you want to play? Well, then just pick random. Figure it out as you go along. Some faction or mechanic might seem more intriguing to you than others. Or maybe you'll stick with random, becoming one of those rare players that likes to play all three factions equally. Gee, thanks Apoptosis. That's some really great information and that was really helpful. Well, that's it, everyone. I hope this helps you overcome some of those ladder trepidations, and I hope this encourages you to try out ranked even if it's not normally your thing. I'll see you on the ladder. Good luck, have fun.